Joseph's brothers made their way home in haste and despair. All they knew was that someone had set them up as thieves before the Egyptians, and Simeon was imprisoned there as well. Now they had to tell their father that their youngest brother and his absolute favorite and only other son of Joseph's mother, Benjamin, would have to go to Egypt as well. Hello and welcome to Tales from the Scrypt, Bible stories for adults. My name's Louie Marsh. I'm the senior pastor of River Church here in Parker, Arizona. I'm glad you're with us, and let's just jump right back into the story, shall we? Just as they expected, Jacob, also known as Israel, was distraught at the news. He refused to even consider it for a moment, and so they did not return to Egypt. But when their food was almost gone, they finally had to face the issue. Israel finally, reluctantly agreed to let Benjamin go, but he had them not just take all the money that had been returned to them, but twice that amount, plus honey, myrrh, fruits, nuts, and grain, all as a gift to the powerful Egyptian lord who held their lives in the palm of his hands. As his sons, including his beloved Benjamin, mounted up, Israel stood trembling in the morning light and gave them his blessing. Take your brother and get going. Go back to the man, and may the strong God give you grace in that man's eyes so that he'll send you back here and your older brother as well, along with Benjamin. As for me, nothing's left. I've lost everything. Spurred on by their father's grief and their older brother's imprisonment, they made record time in returning to Egypt. When they arrived, Joseph saw that they had Benjamin with him, so he told his house steward, "Take these men into the house and make them at home. Butcher an animal, prepare a meal. These men are going to eat with me at noon." As the steward led them inside, he said, "Everything's in order, don't worry. Your God and the God of your father must have given you a bonus. I was paid in full." And with that, he presented Simeon to them. They took them inside and made them comfortable. The brothers spread out their gifts and waited for Joseph to show up at noon. When Joseph got home, they presented him with the gifts they had brought and bowed respectfully before him. Joseph welcomed them and said, "And your old father, whom you mentioned before to me, how is he? Is he still alive?" And they said, "Yes, your servant, our father, is very much alive." Then Joseph picked out his brother Benjamin, his own mother's son, and asked, "And is this your youngest brother that you told me about?" Then he said, "God be gracious to you, my son." Deeply moved upon seeing his brother and about to burst into tears, Joseph hurried out into another room and broke down and cried for a few moments. Then he washed his face, got a grip on himself, and said, "Let's eat." Joseph was served at his private table, the brothers off by themselves, and the Egyptians off by themselves as well. The Egyptian regarded female animals as sacred, so they would not eat with or use a fork or knife of anyone like these Hebrews who ate them. Beyond this, the sacrifice of rams, sheep, and goats was detestable to the Egyptians because Egyptians worshipped a false ram idol named Khnum. I think that's how you pronounce it. It's Khnum. They thought that he was the creator of humanity and that he made humanity by molding humans from clay. The brothers were seated facing Joseph, arranged in order of their age from the oldest to the youngest. They looked at one another wide-eyed, wondering what would happen next. When the brothers' plates were served from Joseph's table, Benjamin's plate came piled high, far more so than his brothers'. The brothers felt that this was a good sign, so they feasted with Joseph, drinking freely. But Joseph wasn't done with them yet. He wanted to test them one more time and to set up a way to return his father and extended family to Egypt. So he had the steward put his personal silver chalice into Benjamin's saddlebag. Then, just a few minutes after they left, he had his steward sent after them. He accused them of stealing the chalice, and they offered to prove their innocence by emptying all their baggage. But when the chalice showed up in Benjamin's bag, his brothers tore their clothes in despair and quietly returned to Joseph's house with the steward. Joseph was waiting for them when they arrived. Judah and his brothers threw themselves at his feet. He accused them, "How can you have done this? You had to know that a man in my position would have discovered this." Judah spoke for his brothers and said, "What can we say, master? How can we prove our innocence? God is behind this, exposing how bad we are. We stand guilty before you and ready to be your slaves. We're all in this together. The rest of us as guilty as the one with the chalice." "I'd never do that to you," said Joseph. "Only the one involved with the chalice will be my slave. The rest of you are free to go back to your father." Judah came forward. He said, "Please, master, can I say just one thing to you? Don't be angry. Don't think I'm presumptuous. You're the same as Pharaoh as far as I'm concerned. You, master, asked us, 'Do you have a father and a brother?' And we answered honestly, 'We have a father who is old and a younger brother who was born to him in his old age. His brother is dead now, and he is the only son left from that mother, and his father loves him more than anything. And now, can't you see that if I show up before your servant, my father, without the boy, this son with whom his life is so bound up, the moment he realizes the boy is gone, he'll die on the spot. He'll die of grief, and we, your servants, who are standing here before you, will have killed him. And that's not all. I got my father to release the boy, to show him to you by promising, if I don't bring him back, I'll stand condemned before you, Father, for all my life. So let me stay here as your slave, not this boy. Let the boy go back with his brothers. How can I go back to my father if the boy is not with me? Please, oh, please don't make me go back and watch my father die from grief." Well, Joseph couldn't hold himself in any longer. So he cried out, "Leave, everyone leave." His sobbing was so violent that the Egyptians couldn't help but hear him. The news was soon reported to Pharaoh's palace. Joseph spoke to his brothers. "I am Joseph. Is my father really still alive?" But his brothers really couldn't say a word to him. They were speechless. They just couldn't believe what they were hearing and what they were seeing. "Come closer to me," Joseph said to his brothers. "I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into Egypt. And now be not distressed or angry with yourselves because you sold me here, for God sent me before you to preserve life. For the famine has been in the land these 2 years, and there are yet 5 years in which there will be neither plowing nor reaping. And God sent me before you to preserve you a remnant on the earth, and to keep alive for you many survivors. So it was not you who sent me here, but God. He has made me a father to Pharaoh, and lord of all his house, and ruler over all the land of Egypt." So at long last, his family was reunited, the dreams having all come true. Israel came to Egypt with the Pharaoh's blessing. They found good land to settle on, and they thrived. You can't blame them for seeing this as an end, but in reality, it was just the beginning. For soon enough, a new Pharaoh would arise, Israel would be enslaved, a deliverer would arise, and God's great plan of redemption would continue to unfold. But that's a story for another day. No one there on that glorious day knew any of this, nor did they need to. They just trusted God with their futures, which is all anybody can do. Be sure to join us right here next week for The Incompetent Seven, a little humorous story from the New Testament. See if you can figure out who that is. And join me right back here next week. Until then, God bless you, and so long. Hold it, everybody. It's time for a footnotes within the footnotes to take place of the footnotes, but we're not actually going to take place of them. The footnotes that you just saw talked about, well, they're coming up, but these footnotes come first. Why? Because in the very first episode of Joseph, I promised you I'd talk about some stuff about this, and I'm going to keep my promise. So you're going to be looking at some pictures here that have to do with some of the things we've talked about before, the statue of Joseph, his tomb, etc. And I want to just run through this real briefly so that you will grasp just how amazing and incredible these archaeological discoveries are. Number one. Number two, go check out the website from which I get a lot of this information. They put out some online movies. I've watched two of them. The first one was excellent. Second one, I wasn't quite as impressed, but just check out Patterns of Evidence. Patterns of Evidence. We'll put the We'll put the web address in the notes. So first of all, what you're looking at right now, instead of my smiley face, you're looking at a reconstruction that the archaeologists have put together, obviously using computer programs. The home that they found in the middle of this town, which is buried very deeply for a long time. This house is a kind of a mini palace. It's not the normal house that you would find. It has 12 pillars in it, and in the backyard, you can see all these little things here. You see the pyramid thing. We'll get to that in a minute. These are graves with little things over them to mark them. There's 12 graves in this backyard. 12 graves. There's also 12 tribes of Israel. Sound familiar to anybody? Well, it should, because clearly this house that was built here, they tore down an older house and built this kind of a mini palace, is the home of someone very, very important. Then you have all these graves in the yard. Obviously, these people must be connected to whoever this very important person was. And then when you go inside this pyramid, you find out something really amazing. First of all, in ancient Egypt, nobody got pyramids except pharaohs, pretty much, and their queens, maybe things like that, but that's it. And yet here, we have this kind of a mini little pyramid with a little entryway into it, you can see there, and that's incredible. So what's inside is this giant statue. It's about 12 feet tall, roughly 10, 12 feet tall. Now, statues in Egyptian tombs are normal, but they're usually maybe a foot and a half tall. They're not like this. This is a huge statue. Now, obviously, this is the restoration of it that has been put together, but you'll notice some things about this, and we'll go through some of them in a minute. But the one I want you to notice right away is the coat. It's a coat of different colors. And these colors have actually survived down through the years. And it's very possible that this person who's not an Egyptian, we'll explain that in a second, well, who else would it be? It would have to be Joseph. Who else came from outside of Egypt, rose to absolute power, second to none but the Pharaoh, gets a giant statue built of him with a very colorful coat. And it may be that Joseph, although he obviously lost the original coat, developed a kind of a thing for coats, of colorful coats, because they reminded him of his dad and his family. And so he wore that as almost like a signature piece of clothing so that people would know, or at least he would know, his background and where he came from. Now, this is a close-up on the statue head. It's clearly pretty beat up. The hairstyle here, which has been damaged here, but the hairstyle is not Egyptian. It's Semitic. It comes from the way the Jews and the Arabs in that region and in that time in the Middle East wore their hair. That's one clear sign that this statue is not Egyptian. Now you can look at this and you can see that's the unusual hairstyle. Somebody gouged out the eyes, maybe attempted to split the head open. His features were defaced, which would make sense when the Old Testament says that, pharaohs lasted a while, but they didn't last forever. And when the new pharaohs following Joseph's time came on board, they were not excited about having all these Hebrews, and they made them all slaves. And so there you go. Now you notice over here on the left-hand side, it says throwing stick over right shoulder as sign of office. It's also a sign of the fact that he's not Egyptian, he's Semitic. Again, they use throwing stones, and in all the Egyptian artwork too, if they had a picture of someone they wanted the viewer to know was Semitic, they would put the throwing stick on it. Think of it as sort of like a boomerang. They threw it to knock out, animals, prey, stuff like that. It didn't come back at least I don't think it did, like a boomerang kind of sort of does. But that's what it is. It's a throwing stick. It's a weapon that they used for hunting. And this is the sign that, again, this statue, whoever this is, and it has to be Joseph, was not Egyptian. And then there's this. This is in the town that they found all this in, and this is called, not by the archaeologists, but they found it named in material they dug up, Joseph's Canal, or Joseph's Waterway. Waterway of Joseph. Think about that. This, I don't know how much more proof you need than any of this. I mean, and that's why I'm making such a big deal out of this. This is absolute proof positive that someone that lived well over 3,000 years ago, this is absolute physical evidence from the place where he lived that he existed, and that the Bible is right. If the Bible is right about Joseph being an actual real person, he was sold into slavery, he did rise to the very top. We know these things, and all of the archaeology simply supports this story. Now, the reason that you don't hear much about it is that this level where they found all this is several hundred years too early, because most people think that Ramses was the pharaoh for the Exodus. But all the physical proof points to earlier pharaohs being the pharaohs of the Exodus, because you have these huge cities spring up. They're clearly Semitic in the way their homes are built and everything else, and then all of a sudden they're gone. Well, what does that sound like? That's right, it sounds like the Exodus. So I'm going to wrap this up just by saying, tell people about this. Tell them that we have absolute proof positive, not only that Joseph existed, but that the details of his story are right there in this, that the Bible, as always, is right. Once again, this should strengthen your faith. This should get you excited. And this, I hope, is something you can share with a lot of other people, so that they too can have their faith strengthened. And maybe, if they're not believers, they'll see this and they'll realize the Bible is true. I better listen to it, and I need to open my heart up to Jesus Christ. Now, back to the original footnotes. These, I guess you could call the footnotes of the footnotes, or something like that. Welcome to Footnotes. Wanted to make a follow-on comment from last week's discussion about forgiveness and trust, and then I want to tell you a little bit more about ancient Egyptians and animals, and because that plays into this story, as you've seen, and thought you might like some more information. First of all, on the forgiveness trust front, you can see how it works out. Joseph is a wise man, and he does trust his brothers again, but only after they show him and prove to him that they are truly sorry for their sin and and that they can be trusted again. And of course, it's very hard to trust somebody if they won't admit they've wronged you, if they have. If they just want to say, well, let's not worry about that, let's just start over, that's usually not a good thing. And Joseph was wise enough to prove their character several times before he was willing to trust. And then when he trusted, you'll notice he was all in. Okay, sacred animals. In ancient Egypt, they played a huge role in Egyptian art and religion. The different animals were supposed to embody divine attributes, and sometimes would even be thought of as manifestations of the various Egyptian gods. Among the most significant of these, interestingly enough for modern people, is the cat. Now, cats were closely linked to the goddess Bastet, who represented home, fertility, and protection. So cats were highly esteemed, often kept as household companions, and even mummified as offerings, by the way. That's just interesting. The bull was another big one. Was reported in a religious symbol. Apis, the bull, was believed to be an earthy representation of the god Ptah and later the god Cyrus. So they were honored with elaborate ceremonies. When they died, they had a big funeral service for them, believe it or not. And sometimes they would even house them in temple ponds as living incarnations of the gods. Scarab beetles symbolized rebirth, resurrection, transformation, and were linked to the sun god. And of course, as you probably know, the scarab is a well-known symbol in ancient Egyptian artwork as well. So these are just a couple of examples of the the role that animals played in ancient Egypt. After all, if you worship a god and you think that this god is taking the form of an animal in this life, you're going to treat that animal pretty well. You're going to treat him better probably than you treat yourself. And that's exactly what happened. And you can go over to India in the not so distant past where people starved to death, but the animals were kept alive because they were reincarnations of people. And so you don't want Uncle Harry to get hurt there, so you take care of him even while people are starving to death. So the idea that this is just kind of some quaint, ancient footnote is actually not true, because what you worship always impacts on who you are and what you do and how you do it. And that's a lesson you can draw from this story as well. Come back and join us next week. We're hopping into the New Testament for the Incompetent Seven. Yes, indeed. See if you can figure out who that is, and come back next week to find out. Till then, take care and so long.